Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the region of the globe that you are connecting from. Thank you for joining day 2 of the Island Finance Forum. I am pleased to welcome you to this fantastic session that will start shortly. But first, let's go with some important information. Thank you, everyone that has been participating on the forum. Please keep up with your comments using the hashtag Island Innovation on social media. And we have people from all regions around the globe. And to get to know you a bit better, you will be seeing a poll appear on your screen right about now that please take the time to respond. It only has 3 questions, and it's about the region that you're connecting from, the sector that you belong to, and the industry that you belong to. So please feel free to answer the questions, and also feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and to connect with us as well. I am very happy to present this session that is called Building Resilience and Navigating Climate Challenges for Islands. It's going to be a critical conversation with leading experts navigating the complex terrain of climate risk and resilience in island communities. From rising sea levels to intensifying storms, we'll delve into the unique challenges these regions face and explore groundbreaking solutions to build resilience and safeguard their future. Now, I'm glad to see people from Panama, from Mauritius, from Jamaica, from all regions in the globe. And let me see how the poll is going. So yeah, we have the majority of you from the Caribbean in the house, and I'm very glad. I myself am originally from the Caribbean, Margarita Island off the coast of Venezuela. And we have also a large contingent of people from North America, Europe, Africa, South and Central America, and also from Asia. So thank you so much. Whereas the sector goes, we have the majority of you belong to the private sector, and many important people from NGOs and government and the academia sector are here. And the industry, it varies, and we have a lot of people in finance, which is to be expected. This is the Island Finance Forum after all. And we have people from the energy, management consulting, environmental services, agriculture, and waste and circular economy and other industries. Thank you so much for your participation. Now, this session is essential for everyone who wants to understand the urgency of climate action for island communities, discover innovative solutions to address climate risks, and contribute to building a more resilient and sustainable future for islands. I am now pleased to welcome to the stage our moderator for the session, Zachary Weller, Chief Operations Officer at CorpCare. Zachary?
Thank you, Christian. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome the panelists and all attendees. I have a distinct honor of facilitating the conversation this morning. I'd like to take the time now to welcome our panelists and ask them to take turns introducing themselves. I'll start with Tisha Maraj, who is Sustainability Expert and Senior Manager and Group Sustainability Officer for Republic Bank. In her role as Group Sustainability Officer, she is responsible for developing and implementing strategies that will steer the group's operations to incorporate ESG concerns across the 15 territories in which the group operates. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience, having worked as a sustainability and communications professional and environmental consultant on a range of local and international projects for over 2 decades. Welcome, Tisha.
Thank you very much, Zachary. And of course, welcome to all the participants. And I see that we have quite a range from the Caribbean all the way to Mauritius and Africa. And so welcome to everyone. Again, thank you for to Island Innovation for including me in this panel. As Zachary would have mentioned, I've been working in the field of sustainability environment for over 20 years with working mainly in the communications environmental side with specific reference to the Caribbean. I grew up in the Caribbean in Trinidad and Tobago, but I spent a lot of time as well in Canada. But I've always come back understanding that that I guess the expertise and knowledge that I had was going to be very beneficial for the region. Currently, I am, as Zachary said as well, the senior manager, also the group sustainability officer for Republic Bank. Now, Republic Bank is primarily a Caribbean-based bank. We operate in 14 countries throughout the region, spanning from South America, Guyana, Suriname, all the way to, we're also in the Cayman Islands. We also, interestingly, are also in Africa, in Ghana. So we have a wide range of operations, but primarily my function here is to develop the sustainability strategy for the bank. And I think the bank recognizes that we operate in islands that are very high risk for climate change, and we need to work with the other regional institutions and bodies to, provide accessible financing support, to the region. And we also have signed on to the United Nations Financial Initiative Principles for Responsible Banking and Net Zero Banking Alliance, really looking at also mainstreaming the Sustainable Development Goals throughout our operations and on the Principles for Responsible Banking side, but on the Net Zero Banking Alliance, we are also, of course, aiming for net zero by 2050, and of course, providing our customers and clients with that type of expertise and support as well. So I think more of it will come out through the presentation, but that's just the gist of what my function is at Republic Bank at the moment. So I'll hand you back over to Zachary.
Thank you very much, Tisho. I'd like to now welcome Christina Isler, who is representative for the Southern and Eastern Caribbean European Investment Bank, EIB. She's currently based in Barbados and is an economist by training. She's passionate about sustainable development and climate action, and is a blended finance specialist with over 15 years of experience in program design and management, innovation, research, donor, and private sector mobilization. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much, and hello to everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending where you are. And it's really a pleasure to be participating in this panel from my side as well, to interact with the audience and the panelists. So I'm the European Investment Bank representative based in Barbados, and I cover the Southern and Eastern Caribbean region. But I also hope to bring in this session some examples of our work in other regions. So to a little bit, introduce the European Investment Bank, or the EIB. We are the world's largest multilateral financial institution, and we are the Bank of the European Union, their financial arm. So their member states are our shareholders, and we finance the European Union's policy priorities in the world. And we operate in all regions of the world, not just in the European Union. So last year, our total financing was about 88 billion euros, and 9 billion, or over 9 billion, was outside the European Union. So it was a very significant number. And in the Caribbean, we've already been since 1978. So what we do is that as a development financing institution, we provide attractive concessional lending to public and private sectors. We offer de-risking instruments, equity, and we blend all of that, say with technical assistance and interest rate subsidies and investment grants to increase affordability of projects and to implement and prepare projects. So that's kind of, what we do. And then I would just say, and this will come more in the session later, we are really also a climate bank. So that's really at the core of what we do. And that's actually, what really attracted me to apply to work at the European Investment Bank around, I think, 8 years ago. Over the years, this has really intensified. So a few years ago, we adopted what we call the Climate Bank Roadmap. And this is really a framework that is, guiding us to do even more and better on climate action and also on environmental sustainability. So there are many, many kind of milestones and targets in that roadmap, but I would maybe just highlight a few. So one of them is a target adopted in 2020, And this was to have 50% of our total financing for climate action and environmental sustainability by 2025. So last year we did over around 60%. So you can see, we exceeded already the target. And you can see how important this topic really is for us, and therefore I'm really excited to participate in this panel. And I think then to kind of go to the resilience topic as well, we adopted our first ever adaptation plan in 2021. And that also has a target for us to do 15% of our total finance on adaptation projects globally. So we are really looking to increase our adaptation portfolio. And I'm very excited to talk later, about the kinds of things we're doing, the innovations and, products that we've developed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you for sharing about EIB's work in the Caribbean and across the world. At this time, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Ferber. She's Country and Investment Officer for the English-speaking Caribbean and Suriname for the International Finance Corporation, IFC. She specializes in development finance, private sector development, impact investment, emerging markets, and low-income countries. Her mandate is increasing private sector investments with far-reaching development impact across 13 Caribbean countries, including Barbados, Belize, Guyana, Jamaica, and Suriname. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Zachary. Hello, everyone. And thank you to Island of Innovation for inviting me to participate in the Small Island Finance Forum. It's really a pleasure to be here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Jennifer Ferber. I'm a country officer for the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. We are the private sector arm of the World Bank Group. So IFC is the largest development finance institution focused on the private sector. We have more than 100 offices across the world. We are happy to be here because climate really is a strategic pillar for IFC and the World Bank Group in general. We've committed over 15 billion of our own account in climate, and we've also leveraged another close to 6 billion from other partner institutions also in climate. I've been with IFC for close to 15 years. I'm originally from Haiti, but I've worked all over the world with IFC, particularly in Haiti itself and also in Sub-Saharan Africa and across the Caribbean. Right now, I'm based in Jamaica, but I cover another 4 countries in the English-speaking Caribbean, as well as Suriname. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thanks to all the panelists who have introduced themselves so far. We have one more, Ralph Wirricks. I just want to encourage attendees to ask any questions that come to mind. We really appreciate the participation in the chat. And without further ado, Ralph Wirricks is Partner Risk and Quality at Grant Thornton. He's based in Curacao. He's a risk management and quality leader and has responsibilities towards compliance with international standard and quality management and national quality control programs. He's Grant Thornton's go-to person for all complex audit methodology, accounting, and reporting issues. Ralph also holds a PhD from Erasmus University in sustainability assurance and is the director of Postmaster Accounting Program at Tilburg University. Welcome, Ralph.
Okay, thanks for the introduction, Zachary. Yes, I represent Grant Thornton in the Dutch Caribbean here. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I have a dual role, one in the audit firm as Grant Thornton, where we advise on sustainability initiatives and for management on how to integrate sustainability in their strategy. Obviously, we also audit the reliability of sustainability reporting. And so that's what we do for our clients. And in discussions with university We have a lot of discussion on how to integrate sustainability into master and postmaster studies, especially on how to integrate sustainability in internal control, sustainability reporting, and auditing of sustainability reporting. I think this session is very important since we see international attention for sustainability in general, and especially for climate change. That brings together with it a shift in the way of doing business and being transparent about it. And I think on a personal level, it's important to create awareness about the behavior, choices, and decisions. What we see in the world, of course, are a lot of initiatives like the Paris Climate Agreement, the European Green Deal. We've just seen the COP28, etc. While our local situation, we see still limited regulation on sustainability. Small and medium-sized entities, for which you miss the scale and therefore the power, maybe agility and resilience that multinationals have. We also see, especially in Curacao, the Dutch Caribbean, little active government policy, a little transparency in the actions that are being taken. And I think, like I just said, the awareness of the population is still insufficient. And if we do not act appropriately in the next 5 or 7 years, our international connection will be in jeopardy. So, I think our reaction to climate change should be that we, as an island, are very vulnerable and in the front line of the climate impacts that are caused obviously somewhere else in the world. So I think the island nations should be leading by example in tackling the global environmental crisis. And I'm glad to talk about this with the other panelists. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ralph. And I think one way that we in the island communities can seek to tackle the challenges we face through climate change is through developing a robust agricultural industry that can handle not only shocks but the uncertainty that comes with a changing climate. So we have a question here from Yason Tafari, who is asking the panelists if there are any investment grants for agro-businesses that are based in Caribbean doing development projects. Do any panelists have any response to this question? And if not, agro-business.
I can
Go ahead.
talk about, yeah.
Thanks.
I think my video is off though.
No problem.
Should I go ahead anyway? Yes. Okay. So that's a
Sure.
really good, yes, that's a really good question, I think. Because, well, especially in the Caribbean where, we are such huge food importers. At the same time, we do have a climate that can grow a lot of food due to economic priorities. We have not focused on agriculture, and I think and the agribusiness. And just yesterday, actually, I attended a session with some small farmers because the Republic Bank, as I said, being in the Caribbean and understanding what some of our challenges are. We have had priorities from oil and gas to tourism, with agriculture not being a major one. But I think now the powers that be are recognizing that this has been a flaw. So the bank is trying to work with governments and with farmers and so on to develop products that can make financing more accessible to them. because we have issues such as land ownership that prevents farmers from accessing financing, and other type of gaps. So at the bank, we have actually put together two main products. One, we formalized a small and medium, an SME unit, which includes an agricultural arm, which is going to now work with those smaller, medium type farmers and agricultural businesses to find out what the gaps are and to work with them to develop stronger business plans that they can access financing. So we have $100 million USD target in which we are going to work towards in building capacity within those smaller farmers to do so through that SME unit. And I think we are now looking at softer type loans and concessionary financing so that they can access this money, easier as well. We also through we have a program called Power to Make a Difference, whereby we work very closely with different groups that require grant funding and financing just to develop projects. And these are mostly NGOs and CBOs and cooperatives and so on. And we have had a considerable amount of success in financing community-based types of agricultural projects. So at least from our end, from the private sector banking side, these are some of the ways in which we at the bank are trying to, fill that gap in terms of our smaller, micro, medium farmers and agricultural businesses to access financing, which they would have not had access to before based on their structure and so on. So I'm not sure if any of the other panelists want to add to that as well.
I would actually add to what was just said as well, that so as an institution, we work a lot with financial intermediaries across the world, both public, national development banks and also, private sector banks. And in many regions, indeed, we would have programs really to target farmers. And those programs would, often come with different type of grant resources, both, for the businesses and also for the banks themselves to develop, specific lending products and processes and training in their institution as well to target that segment, because indeed it is very important for food security, and it's a sector that is very much suffering, from impacts of climate change in many regions. So we are, for example, doing that in sub-Saharan Africa. In the Caribbean, we do hope to put in place in the future a green finance program. So it would be, lending through public institutions to different sectors, and that could also, include farmers, and that would also come hopefully with grant resources. So we hope that in the future we would have something in place in the Caribbean to address that. And I would also mention, some of the kind of maybe enabling factors as well. So one issue in the Caribbean, for example, is water scarcity in many countries. And that's obviously a hugely important issue for agriculture, right? So what we do have in place in the Caribbean at the moment is a program that is addressing, water and wastewater and that types of topics. And that is a program that is really with the public sector and comes for investment grants. But by kind of working on those issues of water scarcity and making more water hopefully available for agriculture, that would also support the environment for having more agricultural production. So that's a regional program we have currently that is open for all of the Caribbean in different sectors related to water, solid waste management, wastewater, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you both. First, a follow-up question for Tisho. Can you tell us how to follow up on the agricultural grant options that you mentioned?
Yeah, well, I can, if there's a participant in here who requires more information, you can always provide them with my contact and we can have a further discussion for sure. And I can, answer that in more detail after.
Great. So to all speakers, Renata Costa is asking, building resilience, what are the sort of projects presented for financing support and technical quality approach that you see? So anyone who feels that they want to answer that one?
I'd be happy to take on that to talk a little bit about the resilience building projects that we are working on in the Caribbean. So first of all, I have to say that resilience projects are face a number of challenges in general. Because typically there's a lack of data, there's a lack of instruments, there's a lack of tools to encourage private sector investment in that sector. And there's also a perception of very low returns in resilience projects. So how do we attract the private sector in resilience projects in the Caribbean? What we've been doing at IFC is we are developing financial instruments, standards, and tools, identification tools to help private companies ramp up their investment in resilience. If I can give an example of an instrument, I will say sustainability-linked loans, which are basically loans that are designed to incentivize the borrower's achievement of specific climate targets through pricing incentives. And an example of standards, market standards, still in resilience, we have our Building Resilience Index. It's actually the first of its kind, and it helps building developers assess climate risk and identifies measures to address those risks. We also have lots of tools that use data for better adaptation. For example, in Barbados, we work very closely with the government to develop a digital resilience tool. So it's a tool that's very good for resilience planning because it helps to identify climate change hazards. It offers options to mitigate those risks and also allows to prioritize the investment based on the national resilience targets. A lot of the work we do in resilience in the Caribbean is actually through public and private partnership, PPPs, because in many of the small islands, there are fiscal constraints and resilience is expensive. So it will be very difficult for the government to spend all resources, right? Limited resources in resilience. So the private sector plays a key role, and public-private partnership are a way for the private sector to participate in building key resilient infrastructure. At IFC, we have over 30 years of experience in PPPs. So what they are is they are like, it's a special type of advisory service we offer to government where we help them basically design, structure, tender, negotiate, and bring to commercial infrastructure projects that are sustainable and attract private sector investment. So a good example of such a project is a PPP project we have again in Barbados, the Lamberts project, which is a 30-50 megawatt wind project. It's going to be the largest commercial wind project in Barbados, and it's going to help the country reach its target of 95% renewables by 2030. So in here, we are working, in that project, we are working with the government to attract private sector in the development of that wind plant. And this is very important because this is, it's not very common in the Caribbean for private sector to be involved in the implementation of infrastructure projects in energy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Go ahead, Christina.
I can maybe continue from Jennifer's excellent intervention. So from the EIB as well, I'd first start by saying that we mainstream resilience across projects. So we have a climate risk management system. So adaptation criteria added to all projects. So when we finance infrastructure, it's always nowadays resilient infrastructure, sort of regardless of the sector. So the types of projects we finance, just to give a few examples around the world, just also outside Caribbean. For example, in Fiji, we financed resilient water infrastructure. In Vanuatu, we financed the first ever wind farm that was also built to withstand cyclones. In Crete, we've recently, in Greece, financed irrigation and reservoirs. So we finance a lot of climate resilient infrastructure in the public sector, but we also do private sector projects. So for instance, we can invest in funds. So one recent example of a private sector fund that we've invested in, it's called CRAFT, which stands for Climate Resilience and Adaptation Finance Technology Transfer Facility. And this is a fund that will invest in companies that are developing adaptation solutions globally, and often like technologically driven solutions. So we would invest in technology and in private companies that are trying to develop adaptation solutions. I would also say that we work a lot increasingly also on subnational level. So we have something that is called the City Climate Finance Gap Fund, together with the World Bank and with GIZ. And that fund is giving early stage technical assistance to cities and to subnational authorities. So we also try to work at different levels of public and private sectors. And in the European Union, we have a advisory platform that is called ADAPT. And this is basically like a one-stop shop for both public and private authorities and also subnational authorities to get that assistance to develop adaptation plans, to develop projects and to have capacity building. So we have different instruments in place in different regions. And then lastly, I would mention that in terms of resilience, we also try to have innovations in the types of terms that we can offer to our clients to really account for the vulnerability and often very particular circumstances of island states in particular. So we announced last year that we will be piloting what we call climate resilient debt clauses in our contracts for our projects. So this means that if a certain national emergency is declared, there could be deferral of debt payments, and we hope to pilot that in least vulnerable countries, in most vulnerable countries and in islands in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Do we have any other answers from our panelists, or we have another question if not? Okay, I'll go ahead. Are there any examples that the panelists can share regarding education and public awareness campaigns? How do your initiatives involve communities and island populations? This is from Alexina Pratho from Corp here.
I can go really quickly again.
Thanks, Nisha.
It's sometimes, people always think that banks or especially private sector banks, we're all about making money, and that's true too. But I think Republic Bank, though, we have recognized that education is a huge gap. And I think one of the speakers before mentioned that. I think Ralph spoke about, it's a very slow movement in the Caribbean, as compared to Christina, who works, a lot with the EU and so on. And so, where we need to be as a region, we were just not there. And I think education plays a huge part, because so what we've done is that we've actually, through that same through our Power to Make a Difference program and even our small business program as well, we go out to communities and we try to marry financial literacy with climate change issues. So the program that I attended recently, we worked with farmers who are actually farming on hillsides, and try to work with them for them to understand what they would need to do to become more climate resilient. And to address the issues, because in the region we're finding that there are a lot of the temperatures are really getting up there in terms of and it's affecting, growing seasons, lack of water resources, lack of rainfall. So all these issues that they're now facing. And normally, like if they take loans and so on, they fail. So we're trying to work with and that the farmers are one example. Another one is women-led businesses that we're also trying to build capacity with women who are also looking to go into sustainable type businesses. And we're developing a really strong program to work with again women, having them access financing and to make their businesses more sustainable. So I know there's quite a few examples that we do, but I just wanted to highlight that yes, education and financial literacy, we are now moving towards building in a climate risk for them to understand climate risk, how we are going to assess and how we're going to evaluate climate risk when applying for financing and funding as well. So that's just one example that we do at the bank.
Thank you so much.
Yes, I'd like to add on to what Tisha mentioned about working with the communities. At IFC, we typically work through local banks, so a bank like Republic Bank. We work through them to reach the communities, whether it's small farmers, small women-owned businesses. And the way we do this is we may have a funded or unfunded facility with the bank targeting those population. And so we will lend to the bank that will own lend to communities. And along with our investment package, we offer advisory services, capacity building that can help, for example, farmers with climate smart agri practices, or tools that are for governance of small businesses that we can offer through again through the bank and through a program of our own, but aiming directly at those beneficiaries of the bank loans, where we can offer training in business management, in financial management, all sort of capacity building tools that are necessary for the successful management of small businesses. So we offer all those capacity building through the communities, whether it's women-owned businesses, whether it's small businesses that are adopting climate-friendly tools, and also, as I mentioned, farmers for climate-smart agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add something to Jennifer's intervention?
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you very much. The EIB also does, quite similar things to IFC in terms of those, intermediated loans and the advisory services that, we would then offer to end beneficiaries to raise awareness and train them. But I'd like to give a more specific recent example of our work, and that's an example in the Caribbean. And I'd like to also bring to this discussion kind of the angle of entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurs and raising their awareness of sustainability issues. So what we did recently for many years in the Caribbean was a pitching competition for Caribbean entrepreneurs called Micropitch. And unfortunately, this program has just finished, but it was very successful and was run across the Caribbean. And in different years, we did different, themes for training for them. And last year, it was really on sustainability and different aspects of sustainability to raise awareness of how they can incorporate in their business models and improve their sustainability focus. And I really think the Caribbean has immense, talent in my short time here, immense human talent and entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm sure many islands do, that, there's something unique about islands and that maybe fosters this entrepreneurial spirit. And I think all these sort of interventions that were just mentioned by Tisha and Jennifer, they can really foster these entrepreneurs to move their businesses towards, more green practices and really drive that economic transformation. Because it's these type of companies that really are the kind of backbone of most economies in the world, and they create the jobs. So if we can, provide awareness and training to entrepreneurs, I think that's very powerful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Ralph, go
yes.
ahead.
No, I think that awareness is very important. We recently held a session at Grant Thornton with a number of CFOs and CEOs of our largest companies in Curacao, and you see that they are not really aware of what they should be doing and what can be the consequences in the future. So we don't have that legislation that, like I referred to, we have in Europe. But then again, in Europe, also people don't know exactly what to do. They have all the initiatives, but then the European Union imposed sustainability reporting obligations and requirements on the larger firms. And now the smaller firms that are also in the chain on which they have to report on, they don't know exactly what to do, and etc. So I think the awareness is very important. What we see in the Dutch Caribbean is that the government, out of the 17 sustainable development goals, took 8 out of them, took 8 of these development goals and said these are our priorities. And of course, they are also the fundamental things like poverty and education, etc. But what I think is the sad part about it, a little bit embarrassing, is that the Dutch government, for instance, but also the British government did that, and France, is the Dutch government signed the Paris Agreement for the Dutch kingdom, so including the islands here, but the contribution of the Netherlands to achieve the objectives falls under the EU nationally determined contribution, the NDC, but the Dutch Caribbean falls outside the scope of the NDC. So, and like I said, the same goes for the British and the France originally colonial areas. And what we see is, like I said, I'm also involved in this discussion in Europe on how to implement sustainability in the educational program, in Master Sustainability. And what we have just started in Curacao, but we want to do that in an online program together with other Caribbean islands, is set up a master study in sustainability. So with and also perform research under that program. And because the most, like I said, the recent session that we held, we see that most CEOs still believe that it's about green investments and that it takes extra money, and that the whole Sustainability Act is an add-on in your organization. But it should be a transition, and it should be part of the DNA in all tentacles of the organization.
Thank you, Ralph. And I think in keeping with this topic of sensitization and increased awareness, we have a question from Batul, who asks, first of all, they're a professor at the University of the Virgin Islands focusing on supply chain resilience. And they ask, my question is, what are some research project suggestions for our PhD students who are majoring in sustainability? He gives examples like supply chain resilience, capacity building resilience infrastructure, and rising entrepreneurship awareness. So what are some suggestions from our speakers for PhD students' research projects for sustainability?
I keep going first. So it's interesting that it came up because I recently attended a green hydro at the University of the West Indies, the engineering faculty, they presented their PhD research, and these students were focusing on green energy. So, there was a lot on obviously green hydrogen, those type of activities. And I think what was interesting is that, and this is why although this may not be my direct area, but I think what is interesting is that, research within the region on sustainability projects is really critical. And I know supply chain is something that for banks, for example, we do want to one of my responsibilities is greening our supply chain. And to find expertise in the region is really difficult. So I have to go out a lot when I'm getting in consultants and people who are research experts and so on. I have to go out to Europe or North America. And I think this needs to change. And I think this is something that, if we can, this is a question or a topic, I think, that needs to be hashed out, because I think the educational institutions kind of need to work in tandem with what is required, because these students who are doing research, they are going to want to either translate that research into a viable business opportunity or into further research or into teaching, whatever the case may be. But I think it's something that we need to address regionally, because I think our educational system sometimes is not in congruence with what is required for practical applications within the region. And so I think that might be something. I'm also working with the University of the West Indies with some of those students that did do those research. So yes, supply chain, climate resiliency projects, adaptation projects, sustainable financing. Somebody mentioned before too, with the national determined contributions, but again, that is not even translated down to the wider public. So research into how to really mobilize NDCs into viable research and application. So I think, that might be something the private sector needs to work closer with the educational institutions. So I guess just from my standpoint, that's how I see it.
Thank you very much. We have another suggestion from Laura McNeil that says how to create community engagement and no-cost sustainable solutions.
I'll let one of my other people.
I actually had a comment on the previous question, so I don't know if we can still talk about that one.
Go ahead. Yes, of course.
I just wanted to add to Tisha's excellent intervention also, sustainable blue economy. And basically, I know there's a lot of work, in different islands on that, but I think it would be valuable to have research projects to really drill down, how you can green the existing, ocean and maritime-based industries, such as ports and shipping. And what are the industries of the future for islands? Because obviously islands are, like big ocean states. There is the ocean with its opportunities, and also the obligation to preserve the natural capital of the ocean. So looking at, what are the opportunities to green existing industries related to the ocean, and what are the opportunities for islands and kind of cutting edge new areas that are coming, and then what skills are needed, to be developed by countries to take advantage of maybe those new industries, and kind of what training the governments need to put in place to train a generation of people who can take advantage of those industries, and for governments and private sector to develop those industries. So I would just add that as a topic, because I think, when we talk about islands and resilience, it's also important to consider the ocean, the pollution that is going to the oceans, and what we can do to preserve the ocean that is economically so important for islands, also in terms of tourism, right? And as an institution, that's also a very important area of work for us. So we do a lot in the blue economy space, both kind of in a normative way in terms of international initiatives on determining principles of what is, blue economy investment, but also in terms of our own strategy, the initiatives that we take part in. So for instance, we've partnered with a number of other development finance institutions on an initiative called the Clean Oceans Initiative, where we're really trying to invest in projects that reduce the waste that is going into oceans globally. So I think that's an interesting research area to really consider in islands. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'd like to add to this too, and thanks to Christina and Tisha for the excellent recommendations and research projects. Something that I think will be interesting too is to look into storage solution, because as most of the countries are trying to shift toward renewables, particularly solar, one main challenge is the storage of that energy, and it's actually a big, I would say, roadblock, because it's making solar energy quite expensive. So this is something I would recommend as a research project, to look into more storage solution, whether it's battery storage or other forms of storage. And to add also to Christina's point, the blue economy is also a very interesting topic of research. This is something that a priority for us at IFC, and we've been doing a lot of projects and helping banks develop their blue finance portfolio. There are a lot of opportunities in that sector, and it is really worth diving into. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's really pertinent information about figuring out how we can make the most of the abundant sun that we experience on a lot of islands, and use storage to kind of bridge that gap to help us get to where we need to be in terms of renewables replacing fossil fuel for energy generation. We have one question here from Javier, who asks, is there a net connection and a defined modus operandi for islands on the Western Caribbean to integrate ourselves into the programs of clean energy and water supply?
Can you repeat the last part?
Sure. So I'll start from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Javier asks, is there a net connection and a defined modus operandi for islands from the Western Caribbean to integrate ourselves into the programs of clean energy and water supply?
Yeah, I mean, this might be more applicable for the IFC and the development banks, probably to sort of to answer in more detail in terms of the development type programs. But I mean, that's something that I think we've identified as a gap in terms of a collusive sort of plan for sustainability and clean energy generation throughout the region. And I think this is something that we need to address. I know, well, so CARICOM is what is our terms of our collective approach to regional plans. And I think that is something that needs to be developed more clearly, because, you know, while you have the EU, for example, which is a best case scenario in terms of collaboration and a universal sort of approach to more collaboration for these types of projects. And I think that's something that we need to work closer with the development banks, I think, in terms of making it more accessible throughout the region. And then we also have issues of countries in the region, Trinidad, Guyana, even Ghana, which is where we are too, that are really carbon intensive because we depend on oil and gas. And we do not have a clear path for transition into renewables from a region-wide approach. And that is really dangerous for us as well, because we don't have a particular sort of pathway towards that fossil, moving away from fossil fuels. So I'm not sure if my colleagues from the development banks have a more of a recommendation, because it is a gap, I think, for us.
I can add a little bit to the question, and going maybe back to Tisha's reference to the European Union. The EU is also very active in the Caribbean in terms of, working with CARICOM and other regional institutions and working on a regional basis on a number of issues such as energy. So, if you're interested to learn more about that, don't hesitate to get in touch with me, and I can connect you with the persons working from the the EU side on those regional initiatives that they have on different topics. Then I think you mentioned water. So if it's a reference to the water program that the EIB have, then that's a program that's open for whole of the Caribbean. I don't personally cover Western Caribbean, but again, if you get in touch with me, I can connect you with the persons who do. So that's a program that's open to all countries in the world. And us as well, we try to work on a regional basis because there are some, common challenges, even if they're different than on the ground. So we have in place that program to address that common challenge around water and waste management and so on. So don't hesitate to get in touch with me about that topic or connecting with my colleagues in the European Union who may work on other regional topics such as energy.
Thank you.
And I also add to Christina's input with a similar recommendation, because at IFC we focus on the private sector. Since those programs are larger than the private sector, they are usually handled by the World Bank. So I'm happy to gather the information internally. So if anybody wants more information, I'm available. You can just connect me. Zach, you can kindly connect me with them, and I'm happy to provide that information. Thank you.
Definitely. So I think we have one more question from Yasun, who is asking about shipping, which he says is a very critical, especially in the agricultural sector in the Caribbean. He's asking if there is a willingness to lend, grant, or invest specifically in the aspect of logistics, seeing as it is so critical for the Caribbean region.
I'm happy to take on that one. Yeah, shipping is definitely important for the Caribbean. Transport in the Caribbean has been a challenge. At the IFC, we've worked on we've done a couple of studies to assess particularly maritime transport options. But they need the initiative need to be followed through by the private sector. And this is a sector like we are very happy to work in. We know some countries have projects to create logistics hub. Those we can finance as well. So yes, in terms of interest for financing in that sector, our interest is quite high at the IFC, and we think this is key for the development of agriculture, agribusiness and in the region, particularly with the focus of the CARICOM wanting to increase agricultural production in the region in order to reduce the import bill. Thanks.
Thank you.
The food import bill, I should specify.
And indeed, to add to Jennifer's comment, there are a lot of regional private and public sector initiatives around that in terms of ferry connections, linking to food security, as Jennifer was saying, initiatives at CARICOM level. I know also from the European Union. I know that there is a lot of work being done around those topics regionally because of the importance of it. Economically, food security wise, for so many reasons, it's very important. So for our institution as well, we could finance greening, shipping or ports or infrastructure, but I would highlight that since 2019 we no longer finance fossil fuels. So it would need to be more like kind of maybe the greening of ports and that kind of aspects that we could finance as an institution. But definitely it's a very important topic for the region.
Thank you. Ralph, is there anything you'd like to share at this time? Any thoughts? Okay, if that's the case, I'd like to first of all thank all the speakers for being with us this morning, and invite them to just give a quick 30-second final thought. It's been really informative, and I look forward to hearing what the key takeaways have been for each of our panelists.
Should I go first again?
That seemed like the theme.
Yes, so I think, 30 seconds, I think we've highlighted a lot of issues, and these sessions are never long enough. But I think, one of the overarching theme is that, there's a lot of work happening in the area by the multilateral banks, by the development banks, and the private sector banks as well. But I think, there is still that lack of cohesion or communication when it comes to the region in terms of what we really need to focus on, and that comes from the top levels, from the sovereign levels, in terms of how they are marrying their national development plans to encourage sustainability, and that we can create an economy that is working towards that. And I think that is something that we do need to work on, more collaboration and communication between all the sectors, including the educational sector, private sector, entrepreneurial sectors, and so on. So I think that if there's anything I want to see happen and to go forward with regionally, being the Caribbean, that would be it.
Thank you.
No, excellent. And I think on the educational program, that's very important. Also, the question on the PhD students, they could enormously contribute to this collaboration that we should all see. Just like I said in the beginning, if we don't act appropriately within the coming 5 or 7 years, we're going to miss the boat internationally. That's my big concern, and especially the islands also that are very dependent on income from the tourist industry. It's very easy for cruise liners or for airlines or for visitors to not visit our islands anymore. And so if we cannot prove that we are doing enough on climate protection, etc. So environment protection.
Thank you, Ralph.
If I can jump in at this point, well, for me, the key message is that climate change is a reality. We cannot deny it or avoid it. So we all need to be proactive and push for resilience, push for adaptation, because we cannot avoid the effects of global warming, of climate change. So the good news is that there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of investment opportunities in climate. So we need to keep pushing, be innovative to be able to tackle this challenge. And the IFC is here to help cooperation between the public sector and the private sector to be able to deliver on resilience in the Caribbean. Thank you.
From my side, I'd like to make a similar point to Tisha about collaboration. I think that's a point that everybody's made, that I think there is so much going on, and it is so urgent, as Jennifer was just saying, that we really need to put a lot of effort into understanding what everybody is doing and collaborating and finding synergies. And that's both at national level and then at regional level, because there are many regional problems that do require regional solutions. And then between different island regions as well, because there are common challenges, although there are, of course, differences due to history and geography. And I think my institution, because we operate in different regions, what we can also try to bring to our work is the experiences from different parts of the world, to inform, what has maybe worked somewhere else that could also be applied with certain adaptations, and also try to foster connections between different parts of the world, to learn from each other's, how to address the challenges, and also maybe to address the opportunities, say, from blue economy.
Thank you so much. I'd like to invite Christian to speak a little bit more about the other events happening today in the forum. Thank you once again for attending and participating.
Thank you so much, Zachary, and thank you to our wonderful panelists, Christina, Tisha, Ralph, Jennifer. Thank you for attending the session today, for participating here. Thank you to our wonderful panel and to our great attendees from around the globe. Now, before we wrap up, I would like to invite you to join us at the next session that is starting in an hour. That is about the blue economy. So please don't miss that. You will see the links on the chat. And also, I would like to announce very exciting news that Island Innovation is partnering with the government of Prince Edward Island to host the first ever Global Sustainable Islands Summit. That summit is going to be held on Prince Edward Island in Canada, and it's a 2-day in-person event in late May, where we will be discussing solutions and advancements in sustainable energy. You will see the information on the chat. My colleagues there will be sending that. So please follow the link in the chat for more information. Use your discount code IFF2024 to get a super early bird discount valid just for a few days. So please go ahead and take a look at the chat. And well, we will see you on the next session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating. Glad that this session was a success.
Thank you. Bye.